and certain alarm bells,
Great, thank you.
certain, oh, sorry, you're recording
No,
that.
somebody did that. We're trying to figure it out. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I ended up having a bit of an epiphany working for these big corporations, and realized there was something not right. I just felt this not congruent with what I felt in my heart, and it ended up with me leaving the corporate world and changing my life, and really doing a deep dive into Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, because it became Agenda 2030 in 2015 because they kept accelerating it because it wasn't moving fast enough. And really, my focus has been on Agenda 21 because that's still what it is. They call it other things, but it is really still Agenda 21. And I followed Rosa Koire in the sort of the early 2000s, and she was kind of my mentor really until she passed away, and she was saying, you have to get on this in the UK. So I did, and I also read the whole Communitarian Manifesto, anti-Communitarian Manifesto by Nikki Rapana and Nordica Friedrich, which was really the basis of a lot of Rosa's work, and really integrating it and realizing that there was this plan to own every resource on our planet, and these very wealthy, oil billionaires, bankers, really had a plan in order to do that, and uncovering this and thinking that we could actually beat it, until I think the whole COVID thing really blew it out of the water, and you realize the enormity of how it has actually been implemented over a very long period of time and planned meticulously. And so really it's doing a deep dive into all of that, and how, in my view, we're under the grip of the most evil plan ever, perpetrated on the human race. And how do we handle that? With certainly my faith has become stronger in that, because really it's almost the the laying out of prophecy. I can't deny it. I tried to deny it, to say this isn't really all about prophecy, but the more it's happening, the more I realize it is. So it's about trying to really bring that together and understand who are the bad guys in all of this, and are there bad guys? And in my view, there are, and we need to know about them in order to strengthen ourselves. Yeah.
So
So,
how I came to know of you, as I followed the UK column a little bit and I saw you on there.
oh, great. Yeah.
And at first I was a big fan of Rosa Koire. In fact, my very close friend from Fairfield, Iowa knew Rosa in Mexico.
Yeah.
And when she passed, I was very shocked. She said, no, she really passed. So, and I began to see evidence of this plan, this planning revolution, as Rosa called it, happening all around me.
Yeah.
In my little town of West Haven, in Seymour, Shelton, along the river there. So maybe we should, like, because people are wondering, what are you talking about? Clarify like what it's to move people into small controllable units, housing, called smart cities.
Mhm.
And can you take off from there with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Agenda 21 was called the Agenda for the 21st Century, as we know. And within that plan, there was the after Agenda 21 was launched at the Earth Summit, and the people behind that had created various Club of Rome reports that made the bones of Agenda 21, and it was really all about control of resources.
Can you
Um,
explain who the Club of Rome is? I think this is
the
important.
Club of Rome are an organisation. They're a global think tank, if you like, of um, I mean, you can only describe them as an elite bunch of globalists who got together in 1968. It was brought together in 1968 in Rome, in the Rockefellers estate in Bellagio in Italy. And they decided to set up a global think tank, and it was really to create global crises that needed a global response. And they chucked around ideas about how they could actually create a crisis big enough to unite humanity against a common threat, because all the wars had ended. You know, the literally the by 1991, when they published the first Global Revolution, which was a Club of Rome report about climate, you know, it was really what they were trying to find a way of uniting humanity under a common threat, and they chucked around all these ideas, and one of them was, um, we need some kind of global catastrophe that we can unite humanity, and also find a scapegoat, because you know, in 1991 the wall had just come down, the Berlin Wall had come down, the world wars had ended, and bankers need wars in order to keep the perpetual money flow going. And so they'd come to almost like a stagnation when it came to war, and so they decided to, and they were chucking around ideas, and in fact I have the quote here. This is the first global revolution, and it's a
That's the
club of
document. Yeah.
yeah, that's the document. You can get it on Amazon. You can, you know, it's all here. Now on page 115.
Sandy, excuse me, are the authors listed? Like, are there kind of?
Yeah, this was Alexander King, who was a founder member of the Club of Rome, and Bertrand Schneider, who also was a founder member of the Club of Rome. Um, and they were also members of the technocracy movement of the 1930s. And you probably know all about that with Patrick Wood's Technocracy Rising. And that's all in my presentation that I will whiz through. I mean, there's quite a lot to get through. But what I found interesting about this particular one, this was just before the Earth Summit, and they'd been trying to get the Earth Summit together. They'd published 3 Club of Rome reports, one in 1972, which was Limits to Growth, which was all about population. There's too many people on the planet, not enough resources. And then came in 1997, came the Brundtland report, which was also a Club of Rome report by Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was the Prime Minister of Norway at the time, and it was a socialist plan to literally level up the whole of Europe and to take money from Europe and reinvest it in India and China for equity, to be equitable. And what it essentially did is it took all the industry, particularly out of the UK, and sent it over to India and China. And so we produce absolutely nothing now. And then this one was the final Club of Rome report before the Earth Summit. So they've got their ducks in a row. They've got the economic things sorted. They'd also got the population and depopulation things sorted, and all they needed to do was find a vector to bring this global crisis together. Now here they, on page, I think it's 115, where are we? They're looking for a scapegoat. And it says here, the need for enemies seems to be a common historical factor. States have striven to overcome domestic failure and internal contradictions by designating external enemies, because they always needed an enemy. The scapegoat practice is as old as mankind itself. When things become too difficult at home, divert attention by adventure abroad, bring the divided nation together to face an outside enemy, either a real one or one invented for the purpose. And they found their enemy, because on page 115, and this is where the anthropogenic global warming comes in, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. So they're just chucking ideas around. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat, which demands the solidarity of all people. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it's only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. So they identified we, the human race, as the enemy. They are elitists. They are not the problem. It's us. And that is why we are feeling very much attacked at the moment, because we are the enemy of these elitist who
Yes.
think
I
that
want
it,
to add, and to create in our own minds that
yeah,
we are the enemy and that there's too many of us,
yeah,
and all the things that I went along with for many years.
yeah, me too.
Yes.
I went to see the Inconvenient Truth. I believed Al Gore. I believed, you know, what they'd come up with it, you know, in the Club of Rome. It was only later on when I really did the deep dive, and I suddenly woke up and realized that this whole narrative, and there's plenty of scientists who are now coming out and saying, you know, I've got, you know, you've got Clintel, you've got the CO2 coalition, and I've got a database of thousands of scientists at the moment who are saying we got it all wrong. You know, we believed the IPCC, who were set up to tell the lie. You know, they were funded to tell the lie. So what we have now is, yes, there is definitely climate change. You can't deny that, but it's not anthropogenic. Whatever is happening through other ways. That, you know, certainly there's climate change within the solar system. So what we have
There's
to ask,
also some man-made interventions that we
well,
don't have to
exactly,
get into.
yeah, I was going to mention that, that, you know, that there's that going on too. And there's definitely earth changes within the solar system, within the universe, whatever. And I have friends that are dealing with that. I mean, you know, there's scientists I know, and there's a lady called Valentina Zarkova, and she's doing a lot of work into the weakening of the magnetic poles. There's a lot going on, and it's, you know, it's to blame it on the humans is crazy. You know, we've got this whole thing in the UK. You probably have it as well, about cows farting, and they're putting stuff into the milk, you know, which you know damages the cows, which, you know, people are drinking the milk, and, you know, it's ludicrous. The whole thing is totally ludicrous, and we know it, and you know, and yet it's still policy within our government at the moment, and it's beginning to, you know, it's keeping going and chipping away, and revealing these lies, which is what's kept me going for 17 years now, just pushing the truth out. And I still get called a right-wing extremist and
So I
whatever.
don't want to interrupt you too much, but I want you to move from how they've created this idea that humanity is the enemy to the agenda. Well, just go through your thing, like as you said.
Yeah, well, you know, as we know, it all began in, you know, the technocracy movement of the 1930s, and again, the same actors who were involved in these Club of Rome reports were at Columbia University, you know, chucking around ideas, and they came up with this idea that, yeah, you know, they could produce a carbon-based economy, and they pushed that idea, because it was a very it was a very kind of, if you like, a hotbed of Marxist thinking there, and I think they really possibly thought that they'd got the answer to, you know, they'd had the depression, they were fed up with politicians and bankers, quite rightly. It's a bit like now, you know, everybody was fed up with the politicians and the bankers. The depression, you know, was all about, you know, corruption, and maybe they were really trying in their own way to create this new economy, but it kind of got distorted, and you know, they proposed this replacement of capitalism, and decided to, you know, and the Trilateral Commission got on board with Zbigniew Brzezinski. And what happened is that it didn't work. The technocracy movement failed for a number of reasons. That America wasn't ready to give up capitalism after the Second World War, and it
Cindy,
failed.
can you explain how the big oil companies profit from the climate change agenda? Because many people believe that they are fighting, like that you're working for them to stop this
Yeah.
something, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, because they're creating a business. All the banks are using. Sorry, somebody's trying to call round. The banks are using greenwashing, that we call it, to create a whole new economy based around climate change, and they've invested. I mean, companies, big corporations have invested in this things like natural asset companies that are taking literally financializing nature. Um, Natural asset corporations, they're called natural asset companies, where they're buying up whole swathes of land to offset their carbon footprint, because some people do believe in all this. Some big corporations do believe in all this. Others, there are many actors in all of this. Some people, some organizations and NGOs are there simply to make money out of all of this, because in a way, fiat money. They've realized fiat money doesn't exist, so they're trying to create almost like another fiat currency. That's exactly what it is. It doesn't mean anything. Biodiversity net gain is a financial instrument that was created on the stock exchange, the new stock exchange, in 2018, I believe. And this is a way of scoring people who, you know, if you own land, they can score you as to how well you're stewarding it. So although you own the land, you don't control it. These NGOs, these climate NGOs, you know, control your land. And that's what we're finding with our farmers. You know, it's not just about inheritance tax, it's about controlling what they do on that land. They will be down scored if they're actually growing food, because that takes away, they believe that you should be putting wind turbines up and
The
solar
farmers will get
panels.
punished for growing food.
Yeah,
Are you hearing this,
absolutely.
right?
And that's exactly what's happening in the UK, is that we're being punished for growing food. The farmers are, and they're trying to impoverish our farmers. And you know, the UK are really being punished at the moment. It's almost like if they can break the UK, they can break the world. And at the moment, we are the only country in the world that's had climate change written into law. We've with the 2008 Climate Change Act, it was written into our law that we have to reach um, uh, net zero by 2030, which is ridiculous. I mean, they're now sort of hedging it to 2040 or 2050 even, but they've made this pledge that, and this is why at the moment we've got real legislation going through to accelerate the whole net zero and even absolute zero, to the point where they're saying by 2030, by 2050, there will be no planes flying in and out of the UK. There will be no gas boilers, no wood burners, no the whole, also the building landscape has changed. They want housing everywhere, solar panels everywhere, housing. I mean, who's living in these houses?
Nothing wrong with solar panels, folks, but you have to see it's part of an agenda.
Yeah, and it's when it
Which,
becomes a corporate thing, when you get fields and fields of, you know, okay, solar panels on your roof. Yes,
right,
it's
yes.
individual. You're helping yourself. But when it becomes when it's taking away farmland, it's a real problem. And where I live in the southwest, we're probably one of the biggest agricultural areas in the UK. And I've looked at the land mapping for my county, and by 2049 there is no land available for agriculture. It is all housing, rewilding, herbal lays, glamping, tourism, and loads of renewable energy.
I
Um,
also want to throw in, I heard from Richie Allen that in your country, if you have an older home and it doesn't fit the sustainable, insulator,
yeah.
whatever, they can tell you you can't live there and you won't be able to sell it because nobody will buy it
Mm,
because
yeah, I mean,
it's not.
I live in a very old house, a Grade 2 listed house, and I'm going to sell it because I know what's coming. I honestly, the restrictions, we have this thing in the UK. I don't know if you have it in the States, that when you sell your home, you have to sell it with something called an EPC rating, which is an energy performance certificate.
I don't
And
think, do
yeah, and
you?
if your energy performance isn't high enough, you can't sell that house. You certainly are prevented from renting it or using it as an Airbnb or anything like that, because they say it's it's not up to standard as far as energy consumption goes. So there will be a time, and they're offering retrofitting, but that's all at your own expense. You know, you to retrofit a Grade 2 listed house is almost impossible anyway. you know, you can't have double glazing because of because it's preserved, you know, it's got a preservation order on it, and you can't do things like that. So it's very difficult in the UK, and most of the houses are old housing stock from the 19, you know, anything from 1800s or before to, you know, the 1950s. So all of those would have to be retrofitted. People don't have the money to do that, and your council tax is going up, and you're getting less for your services. And yeah, it's pretty dire here, to be honest. It really is.
Carbon zero means human zero.
Absolutely. We are carbon, you know. And let's face it, anything biological is carbon based. And this is where I really see this whole evil agenda when you get, you know, people like Yuval Harari and Klaus Schwab saying we want to get rid of organic life and replace it with AI. And you know, you suddenly realize these people hate life. It's a death cult at the end of the day. It's a death cult. So,
Yes, they've made us hate humanity. I remember when my sister got pregnant with a third child. I was very upset. She's overpopulating. She's only supposed to have two.
oh no, we need more babies. We need more babies. Well, in the UK, we're not even at replacement level.
There
We've
you
got
go.
plenty of migration, you know, immigrants coming in, but our indigenous people are not having babies at all. I have two daughters in their 30s who are finding it almost impossible to leave work and have babies. One of them is married, and she's living abroad to earn enough money to she still wants to buy a house here. I keep saying don't buy a house anywhere but the UK. But anyway, she's yeah, and they're in their 30s, and one of the, you know, they are worried, you know, talking about freezing their eggs, you know, all that sort of thing. My son has had two. I've still got two beautiful granddaughters, but yeah, unfortunately, our girls are not having children in the UK. The population in Europe is not at replacement level. So that's our problem at the moment. Yeah.
So where are we in your standardized talk? Because we're halfway through now.
Ah, right. Okay. Where should we start? Now, I'm going to literally run through. So, can we screen share? How do we do this? Um,
Lynn, I think you have the option on your
Yeah, I
computer.
think I have to do a screen share, hold it, multiple people can share. Whoops.
Do it? Yeah.
No, I'm not sure where to go to.
All right, look in the bottom, all the apps, more.
Yeah, Owen's here.
Well, here's some technos. No, when you originally do it, you go here. You see that? Multiple, that's what you hit.
Okay.
Okay, she should be able to share now.
Okay, you should be able to share now.
okay. So, oh, share. Right. Okay. So now I need to, oh gosh, how do I get to my emails? Because I emailed it to myself, the presentation. Where is it? Let me come down here. Bear with me, I will get there.
In the meantime, I just want to tell people while Sandy's looking, this is the book. I went and ordered it from the UN website. It's 300 pages, the United Nations Program of Action from Rio. And everything she's going to talk about is in here, and you can order it yourself. And it's all glazed behind a green mask that we're saving the earth. It's the same people who were behind Hitler. World control, but in a cute green way.
Right, here we go. You're going to see my presenter notes, but that's okay. There's nothing much I can do about that because it's all on the same screen. Here we go. It's just loading up, I think.
There's also there's many books being written on this. This one happens to be by a friend of mine, Illuminati Agenda 21, Dean and Jill Henderson. Absolutely not a right-wing racist. Complete
Yeah.
opposite.
Oh,
Green Party. Yeah. You know Dean?
Yeah, I've spoken to him. Yeah. On a Zoom. Yeah. Now, can you see that? Can you see
Not yet.
screen. You can. Well, this is, obviously we all know that Klaus Schwab, his whole slogan is "You will own nothing and be happy," because they want to own everything, and you kind of rent everything. And how it all began. It basically started with the technocracy movement of the 1930s. Yeah, it was a movement in the 1930s. We've been through all this. Many alumni of Columbia University head the present agenda: Klaus Schwab, Amitai Etzioni, who's now passed away, George Soros, David Rockefeller. They were an elite group of technocrats trying to implement what was then global warming to create a new carbon-based economy and ultimately a global government. And this is all in Patrick Wood's amazing book. Now, it's interesting that Elon Musk's great-grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was really instrumental in the technocracy movement of the 1930s. He was a maverick and an entrepreneur, and he flew his family all over the world in a plane. And Elon's father led a very unconventional life. From the 1930s right through to 1947, Haldeman headed up Operation Columbia, which was the real push to try and get this technocracy movement off the ground, to bypass any representational government and to install technocracy as the main driver for economy and just about everything else. So he operated. He headed up Operation Columbia, and what he did was he supported Howard Scott and Alexander King in the technocracy movement, but he'd already set up his social credit party. So he was into social credit even at that stage in the 1930s. He organized this Operation Columbia, and it was funded by the Freemasons of the United States. And he instigated a convoy of grey cars to drive from California to Vancouver, stopping at every Masonic temple along the way to preach the new economic order of an energy-based economy. It failed because people weren't ready to give up. Basically, they just weren't ready to give up capitalism. And this is a picture of Technocracy Inc.'s logo. And this is the grey convoy. And if you look on YouTube, you can find this.
I can't see it. We're not seeing anything that you're showing.
Oh, you're not seeing anything? Oh, okay.
What are we doing wrong, Owen?
What have I done? Is it, hang on, let me see. You saw the last slide, didn't you?
No, nothing. We've just seen you.
Oh.
Unless someone else is seeing, anyone else seeing what Sandy's sharing?
Hang on, let me see. Let me bring this up. Share. Let's see if I can do this. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, there we go.
Hey, excellent. Okay. Well, here's it. This is Joshua Haldeman, and he's. I'm just going to turn off the participants because otherwise I can't see my notes. But anyway, he headed all this up, and they stopped at every Masonic temple on the way with this is the grey convoy, and this is Technocracy Inc.'s logo in the 1930s. Well, it's 1947 by now, just before the war. The war had just ended. And anyway, they stopped at every Masonic temple on the road from Vancouver to California, to Vancouver, really pushing this economic system, which ultimately failed. But in the 1973s, Zbigniew Brzezinski reinvented, rebirthed the technocracy movement, and he called it the new economic order, and he wrote a book called America's Role in the Technocratic Age, and he pushed again the technocracy movement. And of course by then he was in with the Club of Rome, all of that. So that's the way they did it. They reinvented it and brought it back. And I just want you to see that, that both these buildings, the one in Geneva and this is the one in New York, the UN buildings, were financed by J.D. Rockefeller. He donated 2 million at the time to the land in New York I think it was 8 billion, sorry, to have the buildings built, and he also bought the land in Geneva to have the Swiss UN built. So all of these, you know, were brought together by the Club of Rome.
Oligarchs.
Yeah, yeah. And there we have the. How do I get rid of the participants? Can I do that? Stop. No, I can't do that. So, yeah. So I'll read from my other notes because I've got plenty of them. Yeah, the Club of Rome is a global think tank. I think we talked about this. The main purpose of the Club of Rome is to formulate crises through which the world can be controlled under a world government. Global problems require global solutions. And then we have the 3 Club of Rome reports. Says this is limits to growth. I mean, you can buy copies of this on you know, in any bookshop. And again, this was really, the first one was 1972, and it was about population and depopulation, and really saying there's not enough resources to go around. And they made wild assumptions because it was all based on computer models, which were flawed. And of course, they were saying, oh, there'll be no food by you know 1980, 1990, and we'll all starve. So they did get it wrong. And then that's between 2 ages. This is when Zbigniew Brzezinski rebirthed the technocracy movement. Then in 1987 we had Our Common Future, which again, it was almost like a second Marshall Plan for Europe. It was to make it equitable. We were too rich, and we were too polluting, apparently, and our money had to be given to the East to make it more equitable to third world countries. And that's where it all kind of went wrong, because we became impoverished, and we've been sanctioned more than any other. Europe has been sanctioned with the carbon taxes, and nothing. There's, you know, India and China are still belching out. If you want to go down the emissions route, that's what is happening. So it was all not equitable, and it was there to literally hollow out the West. The West has to fall, you know, and that's quite obvious. And then we have the first global revolution, which I mentioned earlier and quoted, you know, how they literally plucked the idea of climate change. Yeah, that'll do. We'll use that as the vector, because we need a scapegoat. We need some way of galvanizing people into action and controlling them. And basically, it was a big guilt trip. If you don't go along with this, you're destroying the planet. You're not saving the planet. And who wouldn't believe that? If you wanted to really save the planet, you'd go along with all this. It's very, very clever. And then, of course, we had the Earth Summit in 1992, which was the culmination of those 3 Club of Rome reports. And it, you know, Maurice Strong, you know, he's the grandfather of the Earth Summit. And if you look at his history, oh my goodness, he was an oil billionaire, and he worked for the Rockefellers for 17 years in their asset management areas. And he's a member of the Trilateral Commission, the Council for Foreign Relations, a member of the Club of Rome. He's a self-confessed communist in ideology and capitalist in methodology. That's what he says himself. And so he's a true Unitarian. He straddles both sides. He wants to make money out of being, following the left ideology, but managing to make money out of it. So he was. It was interesting because he was exiled from the US in the 19. I think it was the 19. It was after the Earth Summit, I believe. And it was the early 1990s, because he got involved in the oil for food scandal with Adnan Khashoggi, where the Security Council found that they'd defrauded money, and he had to be exiled to China. And he actually loved China. His cousin lived with Mao Zedong, and he'd ended his days in China, and he always said he loved the Chinese system. So he was very much into communism. Yeah,
And again, I just want to throw in communism, the way the native people of this land practiced it is a great thing. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about sharing. We're talking
no.
about top-down control of everything for the good of everyone, of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the way they sell it anyway. That's the way they say it. But he actually said at the Earth Summit, I mean, we may get to the point where the only way of saving the world will be for industrialized civilization to collapse. Isn't it our responsibility to bring this about? So that's, you know, that's what he's about. And there
Sandy,
he is. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking there might be some questions. We have like a little less than 20 minutes left. If you have some
Okay.
points that you really want to make sure you get in there,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, where's my mouse gone? Yeah. Timeline of globalist organizations. I just want to whiz through these. Yeah, this is interesting because I did want to mention these two because both of these books were said that, you know, they were hoaxes. Please look them up because these two documents were discovered by accident, suddenly appeared. But what's interesting is everything in them is happening. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was all about social engineering and social control and psychological warfare, as opposed to guns and you know, bombs and what have you, and how this is the way that they're going to actually take over the world is silent weapons, and there'll be quiet wars and you won't even know it's happening. And the report from Iron Mountain is about perpetual war and how we need to have, if you know, the whole idea of the United Nations was to have a new peace, as they call it, but that came with caveats, because if you want war, with war, you had to have nation states and perpetual war, because that's the way the bankers made their money. And then if you want peace, then you have to have destruction of nation states, and you have to have more control, technocratic control of the people. So that's what the Iron Mountain report was about. It was about how you get over, and I've got some screenshots of, maybe you can send this to people because you can read, you know, that's a section of silent weapons for quiet weapons for silent wars, because, you know, those are, yeah. Klaus Schwab's dark history, you know, he was involved, collaborated, his father collaborated with the Nazi quest to create nuclear technology. His father was had an engineering company in the 1930s in Ravensburg in Germany. And Klaus Schwab, when he grew up, he was involved with illegal nuclear development in South Africa, supporting apartheid regime in the 1960s. He heads up Davos, and he's written the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution. Now, that there's loads of other slides, obviously, and we get on to depopulation. I have a copy of the global diversity assessment here, which is quite rare. It's massive. It's over 1,000 pages long, and it talks about the Wildlands Project of America, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Which was produced by a guy called David Foreman, who was the head of Earth First, which gave birth to Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. And it talks about, most of the color coding here is red and yellow, and that's where the people are not allowed to be. This has come. This is referenced in the Global Diversity Assessment, which I have a copy of. And basically, you know, these red and yellow areas are core reserves and corridors, little or no human use. And then you've got the buffer zones, which are in between, and the type that, you know, you can't really see it, but the little green dots are the smart cities where people are allowed to be. The pink ones are Indian reservations, and the grey ones are military reservations. So that was their plan, and this was put forward quite a long time ago. I can't remember when, but it was referenced in the Global Diversity Assessment of 1993. And then every year, of course, they have the wilderness conferences. You know, they had one in 2020 in Jaipur, which they had to put online, but it's a plan to rewild 50% of the earth by 2050. Depopulation, I mean, the Deagle documents, you know, Deagle is a military and CIA website, and it does talk about the depopulation figures by 2025, which is quite disturbing. Now, yeah, Agenda 2030, 21 became Agenda 2030 in 2015 in Rome, where the President Obama met the Pope. It wasn't accelerating fast enough for them. They tried to make the year 2000 a goal. They failed. That was the 8 Millennium Goals. And so they accelerated it in 2015 to the 17 goals of Agenda 2030. And they rebranded it 2030. And these goals, do look at them. They sound wonderful. End poverty. What does that mean? Make everyone equally poor. UBI, which is a universal basic income for all, for a fixed amount of carbon credits. Analysis of social credit through digital footprint. Collect data about individuals. Blah blah blah. It goes on and on. And you've got the 17 goals. I mean, have this PowerPoint. Share it. It's got all the presenter notes on it as well. There's quality education. We know that education is failing. It's they're bringing in DEI everywhere and destroying the quality of education. And we've got building smart cities, and then they accelerated not the final acceleration, but the biggest acceleration was in 2019, when it wasn't moving fast enough yet again. And so they met, Antonio Guterres and Klaus Schwab met at the UN building in Geneva, and they set up a meeting to accelerate the 17 goals. And they had several points that needed to be looked at. And one of them was called digital cooperation. How do we get the population to cooperate with the digital transformation? And of course, COVID was perfect for that. They held event 201 4 months later in St. Johns Hopkins facility in New York, where they'd invited Bill and Melinda Gates, and it was a tabletop event about a novel coronavirus escaping from a wet market in Brazil, and how would they deal with it? And of course, Bill was there saying, yeah, we've got the answer, having patented it at the Pirbright Institute in the UK, in Wiltshire, 8 years prior. So it was all planned. And what did we get out of that? The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. How convenient. And then, of course, please read his 2 books. He tells you everything, and watch this, The Hackable Humans, where Yuval Harari is his big, he's the guy who, his top advisor. He speaks of creating inorganic life shaped by AI. He and Schwab are transhumanists and want to merge humans with technology, which will render them inhuman. They see themselves as elites, gods, to have dominion over the earth. Harari states that he doesn't believe in the human soul or God. They want to replace God with science. They aim to be God. So I think I'll leave it there, and we can just talk, because a lot of this other stuff is, I go into communitarianism, but there's too much. And also the destruction of our farming in the UK. We've talked about that. And really that this is, to me, this is, what we have to do really is put on the armor of God, read Ephesians, and we have to literally, that's the way I feel it. We have to therefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you will be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand. And it's about really bracing ourselves, because nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. That's in Matthew 24. So we've got a lot being hit at us, and it's about standing firm, being calm, and understanding that we are in the presence of the worst evil, and understanding that we are human. We're a shard of God. We are a part of that wonderful thing that is divine. And this is what they hate. They hate all this. They want the total opposite. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
How do we fight against something? How do we rally against something so big?
I beg your pardon?
How do we rally against something so powerful and big, like a corporation?
If I really want to be honest, I mean, I wake up and ask myself that question every day. Can we beat this? And actually, I know this sounds awful. It's so enormous, and it's the machine, it's coming at us like a railroad train. And I'm not so sure without, making people feel that there's no hope, equally, I don't like giving people hopium because, people say, oh, we can do this. We can, really, it's about understanding that we are going to go through. It's like living in the book of Revelation. We are going through it. And I don't know how else to sugarcoat it, we it's a, perhaps it is about, going into our divinity and understanding prophecy. I think prophecy is so openly happening in
Sandy,
front
can
of
you turn off your screen share so we can see the speaker as they ask questions? And also, I think I would answer that question, Faith, in that we do our little part in our little area.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one thought that I've had often. When you see beautiful things like the trails being built on the old rail lines, and they're good, there's a lot of good aspects to this. You can't say, we're saying everything in the UN is evil, blah, blah, blah. There's compartmentalization. Everyone isn't part of an evil plan. At the
No.
very top, the strings are pulled. And they're creating a really nice hamster cage for us, especially here on the East Coast, You're gonna love it.
Yeah, you're right. There are pockets, and I don't want to make it sound too dystopian, but I think we, to really, have proper community without it being communitarian run by, NGOs, having a proper community, coming together, eating together, growing food, and being as normal as you can amongst the chaos, and about standing firm, because they are trying to create order out of chaos, and they are creating chaos. And it really is about you know how the Hopi Indians, when they were, the Americans were coming for them, and this isn't in any way, demonizing Americans, but they did this thing called the ghost dance, where they carried on doing all their wonderful dancing, and they danced themselves into a different dimension. They disappeared. It's about really understanding that, this is about this solid, dense material world, which you can transcend with love and with community and doing wonderful things in a loving environment. You can sit around the fire, tell stories, and cook together, and just and in our communities we have strength. We do have strength in our communities,
And
I
we need
believe
to use
that.
the sacred word, no. Say
Yes,
no.
and not consent. Don't consent. I really think that it's got to that point in the UK where the farmers, they're really going for the farmers, and the farmers saying, you are not going to take our land. Now, farmers are the only people in the UK who have allowed to bear arms. And, thank God. They will end up protecting their land. I hope they're not going to go along with all this. There's a whole faction of them that are really angry, really awake. And it's about saying, no, we're not going to have this. You're not going to take our land. The people need our land so we don't starve, yeah.
And go to your town council meetings where you will see them implementing this plan. Now,
Yeah.
both Sandy and I know Rosa Koire. She said these plans are in every planning department in every city all over the world. And the plan is the same for Hanoi as it is for Santa Rosa, California.
Yeah.
This is a world government plan, a stealth plan being snuck in to your little town or city. What happened at the Forest, where the Forest Theater used to be, those big high rises, there's nobody in them. There's going to be a crisis to bring the people in there. The Hegelian dialectic, you create a problem. You want to do something. You want to control people, but they're not going to go along with your plan. So you create a problem. You wait for the reaction. They scream, oh my God, COVID, we need vaccines. Then you institute the solution, which is what you wanted. So you have to be aware of this. When you see something on the news that they're telling you is happening, think, What could
Yeah.
this be used for?
Absolutely.
Hegelian dialectic.
And yeah, that playbook, that Hegelian dialectic playbook is being played literally all the time. It's problem reaction. They create chaos, they come up with the solution, and they make they fix it in their own way.
Get
and
you to
it's
go along with it.
detriment of us. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Like to say, I really appreciate, you're speaking the truth, and the truth is coming out. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this particular service. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
And
that.
I want to add, this is bipartisan. All the parties are on board with this. This is not Republican, Democrat. They're all on board. There's no good guys in the upper echelons.
There's no good guys, and we've seen that in our own governments. There's no difference between Conservative and Labour. They're all, it's a uni-party. You've got the same with the Democrats and the Republicans. And what's happening with Trump? My gosh, he's revealing himself right now. So it's all, who do you trust? You have to trust yourself and your faith. There's no one else. No one's going to come and save us. We have to be resilient in ourselves and to really stand firm and fight this as best we can. It is coming at us, but I think non-compliance, do not consent, is the biggest thing.
Yes.
I'm hi, not to interrupt, but I'm looking at the time. I think I smell the coffee in the meeting house. And, so I am going to try to share the closing song. Oh goodness, share sound and optimize video clip.
We need to make the announcements. We'll do
Oh,
that.
we'll make the announcements afterwards. I think this is going to go.
They paved paradise, put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hot spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They took all the trees, put them in a tree museum. They charge the people $1.50 just to see them. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Hey, farmer, farmer, put away the DDT now. Give me spots on my apples, or leave me the birds and the bees. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Late last night, I heard the screen door slam, and a big yellow taxi took away my old man. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. I said, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
So again, I want to thank Sandy. I guess from here we go to announcements. You're welcome to stay on, Sandy, and chat a little bit.
Okay.
I believe that we have a board meeting after today's service. That's what I have on my calendar. Is that right? Do
No,
we
it's
have a
next
quorum?
week, Tabitha. It's next week.
It's next week.
Yes. And next week, we have Mark Colville of the Amistad Catholic Workers House and Colleen Shaddix of Rosette Village, talking about homelessness and the displacement of people as a public policy in New Haven and in Palestine. Now, these are both people of great integrity who have been willing to go to prison for their beliefs. So I hope you'll all join us.
Very good. Wow, I hear a deafening silence from the rest of you.
Okay, other announcement, yesterday was Will's birthday and today we're celebrating here.
Happy birthday, Will.
Thank you, thank you.
Bring on the cake.
Yeah, happy birthday, Will.
Thank you.
I wish I was there to eat the cake. I hear there's a cake.
There is a
There is.
I wish to file a minority report, as it were. I do not quarrel at all with the idea that there is a technocratic conspiracy, and I've been aware of it. Obviously, the Clintons were part of it, and it didn't quite work the way they wanted it to. But if for the part that I can't swallow is the idea that you've admitted that there is global climate change, but that it isn't caused by human action. That just strikes me as being unpalatable to everything that I know about the science of the situation. And I don't see that it's done. Well, look at this country. We have a party that in power that doesn't believe in it. So how are they helping this grand conspiracy that you're seeing? Unless what you say is they're trying to create chaos. That I can well believe. Chaos is sometimes a very productive place to be in, but
Yeah.
it's fascistic.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I to answer your question, I totally get what you're saying, because I was really taken in by it, and I did transition town training, and I was, you know, as I say, I followed what happened at the Earth Summit, and I believed it. I didn't realize who was really behind the Earth Summit. I just thought it was a bunch of kind of, you know, that it was global leaders who really knew what they were talking about. And I believe the IPCC as well. But it's since then that you find out that actually, you know, not many people that talk about CO2 understand how much CO2 is actually in the atmosphere. You ask anyone that believes in climate change, do they know how much CO2 is in the atmosphere? And not many people can answer that. And it's 0.4%. And that isn't a problem. And in fact, the final slide I had was what happens when you don't have enough CO2. And at the moment, you know, even Patrick Moore, who was the head of Greenpeace, has come out against this fabricated science, because the very cleverly, the NGOs and the lobbyists at the Earth Summit raised enough money to finance the IPCC, and most of those IPCC scientists, a lot of them weren't weather scientists, they were biologists and other scientists, and some of them were just policymakers, and they were financed to push out fake information. And I don't know if you ever got to know about the ClimateGate scandal of 2009 that happened really in the UK, where certain universities were being funded to be giving out false information on climate. And I think it was 1,079 emails were hacked. And Michael Mann from the US was found to be falsifying data that was going through all the universities in the UK that were dealing, you know, they had climate change faculties, you know, all financed by George Soros and all the people that really want this agenda to go through. And he falsified the graphs, and it's called the hockey stick. You know, you've got this this graph that goes up, and actually in reality it goes down, and it's called the hockey stick graph. And it's been proven that that did happen, and it got proved in a court case as well in the US. And it's all been buried, you know, all of this has been buried. And now you've got big organizations like Clintel, Climate Intelligence, you've got CO2 Coalition, all with independent scientists who don't rely on the funding of the universities. And because literally Bill Gates and all those people, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they fund all these universities to push out what the narrative that they want them to do. When you get independent, peer-reviewed scientists, it's a very different story. And I honestly, it's been a massive eye-opener for me. And it's about doing your own research and looking at maybe the Clintel documents. And Patrick Moore has completely done a 360, as has James Lovelock, who was also very into the whole Gaia, you know, we're destroying the planet, it's going to be flooded by, you know, the year 1990 or whatever it was, in his book. He's done a 360 on it, and so has Patrick Moore. And a number of other scientists are coming forward saying, look, this is crazy. And actually what they're doing to create this, you know, all the solar panels, the wind turbines, the EV batteries, none of it is sustainable. It costs more in CO2 to produce. It's a nonsense. And all it's doing is taxing us and impoverishing each country that engages with all the climate and environmental policies and sanctions that are going through.
I'm
Sandy,
not
just
the idea
Sandy
that
just
we're taking some of the wrong steps in trying to combat it. I'm just saying it seems that because of the number of species that have disappeared and the amount of heating in the polar regions and especially the oceans, we are faced by a major challenge. And I know that the technocrats are busily trying to find ways of dumping iron into the water and somehow change the chemistry so that they can sustain the fishery. And this is a very dangerous thing, that we have this idea that we're in control and we can do what we want to do and it will all come out in the end. Whereas,
Francis,
yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Sandy just made a very key point.
which is,
Yeah, but wait a
Is
second. All right, she
The
made
funding of the traditional institutions that we have been brought up to trust, they've been compromised since you were a young man in school. So
that's
the
true.
readings, the temperatures, the data, none of it can be trusted.
And also, you
Chemistry
know,
can be trusted, and that goes back to the last century. I think we can agree that the elites are looking to profit, and certainly they haven't slowed down the amount of jet travels that they do, while they recommend everybody else be carbon neutral. I think the point that stands is that there is an agenda. The elites want to enjoy their lives and use as much energy as they want, while they have a different agenda for us. And that part I think we can agree on. If you want to actually do science, then you have to track back to before science became thought. And we can do that, but that's another discussion. Look, when I mentioned I grew up in DC, yeah, I really did. And then I moved to Connecticut and I've lived here. And all I have to do to see climate change is look out my window. And, you know, that's all I need to say about that.
Follow the
And
money.
for that, we need to get into weather engineering and weather modification, and that'll come eventually, but
I
if we
just
don't
want to
decide
point
that-
out that Maria has her hand up. She's had her hand up for a bit.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Lynn. So I was wondering with this idea that the climate change is not being at least contributed to by humans, by human activity in the form of use of petroleum so let's take that as a given. But then how, so then, and there is no, as the speaker said, there is not enough CO2, or like the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is very low. And there are even dangers if we go too low. Then how, so then is the solution that we should use our cars more?
Elizabeth.
You guys need to mute your mic in the society house.
I think there's been a conflation of pollution and CO2. CO2 is not a pollutant. It is it's actually, it makes things grow. And a lot of people, because of the dumbing down, I have to say it's a lot of dumbing down in education. It's conflated with the carbon monoxide.
No, I'm not, I am actually fully aware, but there is also contribution of fossil fuels to CO2, right? To the amount of CO2. It's not just carbon monoxide.
Yeah, I understand that, but you know, they've also got these carbon capture initiatives going on that are actually creating more pollution than CO2. So you know, if we go too low, at the moment it's 0.0%, and not many people realize that is not a problem. And unfortunately, you never get any of these people who I've questioned it in my own locality with people that are, you know, sort of ingest stop oil and all that. They don't know how much carbon is in the atmosphere. CO2 is in the atmosphere, and they think that it's some dreadful threat. And it's not. And if we go anything below,
no, but that's okay. That's okay. It's okay. So then that's not connected then, in what you're saying, to the strength of hurricanes or the frequency of hurricanes. I mean, I just came back from Florida, and the destruction that I've seen is really startling, and that's something that even the most anti-climate change, anti-science people say is like it's more frequent now. So, you know, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds are saying we are seeing things now that we didn't used to see before. There is and the association is to the warming of the earth, because that is strengthening the frequency, that is increasing the frequency and strengthening the hurricanes. So then there is no, so then what you're saying is that there is nothing we can do about that, because there is nothing that we are doing that contributes to the warming of the earth.
Well, in my view, I'm not sure that the Earth per se is warming. There's anomalies happening. It's very, very irregular what's happening. We get massive cold spells. Like, you know, there's some that say that we're heading for a global cooling. Valentina Zarkova, she's a astrophysicist
so what you're sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to address the specific point, say, of places like Florida where that is happening, and what you're thinking that that's a local thing. It just happens to be a coincidence.
The fact is, we don't know. As far as I'm concerned, it's not anthropogenic. What's happening is that we do have the ability now to modify weather and create storms, and certainly there is the technology that's occurring for that to happen. We've got geoengineering going on, but we've also got the heating up of the Earth's core. The Earth's core is heating up, and that isn't anthropogenic. That is because the magnetic poles are weakening. We're getting a massive weakening of our Earth's magnetic poles. That is to do with what's happening with the sun. Now, the sun is this great big massive ball of fire in the sky, and you talk to the global warming brigade, they don't think the sun has anything to do with the warming of the planet. No, that's a load of rubbish. It's the humans. Well, I'm sorry, this massive ball of fire in the sky dictates weather. It's not what humans do. What humans do is almost like, I mean, my astrophysicist friend says it's a bit like a pigeon doing a poo on the top of Big Ben, and you know, it's the tiniest it doesn't really have any effect. What really does have effect is when the sun pushes out solar mass ejections or doesn't. When the sun goes quiet, the solar system goes cold. When it starts moving, when the solar mass ejections start happening, we get very, very erratic weather patterns, and that's what's happening right now. We're in a larger cycle of a grand solar minimum, but in the smaller sun cycle, we seem to have a lot of solar mass ejections, which in my view, could create another Carrington event. If anybody knows what a Carrington event is when the grid goes completely down and everything would literally cease to function. And we're that far away from a Carrington event at the moment because of the weakening of the magnetic poles. And this really has to be looked at, because this is what the globalists do not want us to know. This is why they're pushing us onto an all-electric grid. Because they know that we have least survival expectation if we go all electric. Because if the grid goes, and do look it up, the Carrington event, the Aurora Borealis was seen all over America. This is 1859. And America wasn't very electrified then, nowhere was. But it did blow up all the cables that went from under the sea from the UK. They were creating the cables for the stock exchange, and they all blew up, and it took them 10 years to replace all those cables. If that happened now, it would be a major collapse of society. And I think the World Economic Forum and all that lot know jolly well they're pushing this as anthropogenic and trying to force the grab of all the resources, because they know that at any minute between, I think the timeline of a Carrington event is possibly, I think it's 2036, between 2036 and 2046. If that doesn't happen, it's later, because you've got various peaks in the solar activity. But I'm not a scientist. I'm just gathering this information from scientists. But I haven't put that in the
One question: if the science, why can the science not be tainted because of the funding? So like I see a little bit of circularity in what you're saying, because you are citing science, but how can we trust the science since it's being funded by the globalists and the corporations? And
I think just pushing the truth out, just pushing the fact that it is.
Yeah, but what is truth?
Maria, she's saying the scientists that she is following are not funded by the globalists.
Oh no, it's not the scientists I'm talking about. The ones that are looking at earth changes are not funded by the globalists.
Who are they funded by?
They're mostly, I have to say, it's usually retired scientists who are peer reviewed, and they maybe they've got pensions they're living on, but they are doing research that really isn't funded.
But if they are retired from universities, right? So they have university training. They were funded. They built their reputations on the fundings by the corporations, right?
Yeah.
As according to you, I'm trying to follow the logic, because I actually had a hard time following all of the points that you're making, and so I'm just trying to understand, at least on the part of the research, in trying to see what the distinction between what is taken to be a fact versus what is taken to be an opinion. Neither agreeing or disagreeing, just trying to understand the sources of the information.
Listen, I don't have all the answers. All I know is that the IPCC, which was the main body of scientific information that was a driver for the Earth Summit and beyond, and putting legislation into policy into legislation to actually push this through. And the very fact that the IPCC that all came into the ICLEI, that went into every town council, which is why we got net zero in every town council in England, and I'm sure you do in America. And this was all based on the IPCC's findings. And they had this ridiculous thing that 97% of scientists agree that it's anthropogenic. That was a completely flawed Canadian what do you call it? It was a questionnaire that went out, and it was deeply flawed, and it wasn't really representative of all the scientists in the world. It was just a core bunch of scientists who had been given training in the IPCC's report. So it was all in-house, if you like. And I really don't trust what happened at the Earth Summit. It's been a great big heist and a guilt trip for the people to believe that that we are responsible for anthropogenic global warming, when in fact there's so many more factors, and we are not to blame. And in fact, what they're doing is that they're using that to destroy democracy, economies, everything, to
speech.
impoverish us. It's there. It's all there.
If
Maria,
you look
Chief
at
So
the
I
Davos,
I just
the
wanted to
Davos,
say,
if you look
Okay.
at the Davos summit thing there, they use more carbon to tell us that, they use more emissions and everything and fuel and put out more carbon than we could ever in all my driving career and history.
Yeah.
Just for that to sit there and tell us that we shouldn't burn fossil fuels. They used more and they wasted so much money and they got filthy rich doing it.
Yeah.
okay,
Lynn,
so a quick, yeah, I don't know if you saw Dory, but Lisa has her hand up.
yes, I don't see it, but go ahead, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I have an action step that you all could do. We have in Iowa a project called Clear Skies Iowa. And in fact, on Tuesday, we're introducing the bill. And we're all going up to support it. And there's a bill going in the Senate and in the House to make it a felony for the chemtrails or geoengineering or whatever you want to call it. It's got lots of names. And the state of Tennessee has already passed this. And there's 11 other states that are working on it. And
22 out of 50.
okay, good. So the point is that collective consciousness is getting more ready to accept this and to support it. And you can get a lot of ideas by going on our website as to how to copy it in your area.
What is your website again?
ClearSkiesIowa.com.
Skiesiowa.com.
ClearSkiesIowa.com. Yeah, and the second point I want to make is we know that the government is an innocent mirror of the collective consciousness, and so it's really up to the people to become more coherent, alert, and awake, and then that governs the government and what they do. And they really don't have a lot of leeway. And when they get elected, they actually don't have their own brain physiology. It's the brain physiology of the collective consciousness of the nation or the city or whatever. And I'm pleased with Trump wanting to drain the swamp, but my main concern now, and probably other things will come up, is it looks like the whole agenda towards more and more AI and more surveillance and digitalization, including the monetary system, that kind of thing. And from time to time, when Trump sends something, I don't give money anymore, but he says, if you were in front of me right now, what would you say? And I've sent him many long emails and research and stuff like that about things. And that's something else you can do. And I don't know that he looks at it, but I'm thinking maybe his staff does or something, because I don't donate money, but I put that thing in there and it says complete your donation, but I think it goes because he keeps sending me stuff, so that's another thing that you can do. And I mean, anyway, it's putting it out there whether he reads it or not. And that's going
you know, thank you for that. I'll have a look at because there are initiatives here. I mean, we had a webinar the other evening where we had a pilot who was completely whistleblowing on the fact that he was recruited by a company in the UK, that they were, you know, they said they were a crisis management company, you know, for spraying on oil slicks, but actually they were a geoengineering company. And he's given me the names of these companies. I've looked them up on Companies House. They've got directors, they've got, you know, massive income coming in. I mean, millions and millions, and they, you know, all of the directors are military. They're distinguished flying cross military pilots. So all of this is, you know, it's not in the commercial realm. It's military planes doing it. And he even said, you know, which we've got a few small airports in the UK, not the big ones, but they're doing it covertly through smaller airports.
Yeah.
And
Even
yeah.
the passenger planes are now doing it.
I'm sorry, I have to break in because we're almost half an hour past
Okay.
our ending time. Two things, we're not saying there's not pollution, and pollution is not a bad thing. That's serious, but it's separate from what this carbon thing. And we cannot talk about climate change if we do not understand geoengineering.
Yeah.
And understand that it's a real thing.
And you all are aware, I'm sure, of that really great website called geoengineeringwatch.org with Dane Wigington.
Yes. Yeah.
I put one in the chat, which is the one that is creating the bills in association with your Clean Skies Iowa.
Yeah.
Also, just to close things up, I wanted to wish Will a happy birthday again. Owen and I are so sorry we can't be out there. We were scheming last night. How can we get out to Connecticut to wish Will a happy birthday? So enjoy today. You know, if you were a kid, you would build a snow fort. Throw some snowballs. Anyway, we should probably end the meeting online. And
thank you so much.
thank
for
you so
having
much,
you,
Sandy,
Sandy.
for joining us
It's been
today.
lovely to talk to you all, and happy birthday, Will. I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your talk very much.
Oh, bless
Excellent service.
And thank
Thank
you
you.
everyone for contributing and questions and all that.
We're gonna get
Okay.
we're gonna get a slideshow, PowerPoint that we can.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll email it to Dory and she can share it, and it's
Will
got my
do.
presenter notes. You know, just use it, you know, do whatever you like with it, because yeah, it's I think, you know, I'm not precious about any work I do. The more it gets out there, the better, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dory.
Some-
And so you're gonna send us the recording of this also?
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, so I should pause it. Pause the recording. Stop. Yeah. Are you